Can you guys introduce Mommy?
Spill the beans with Dr. Jill.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Spill the Beans with Dr. Jill. I'm excited for today's guest because this individual has seen my workshop and is currently working at a sister school. And so I can't wait for them to talk a little bit about their lived experience, and I welcome them to the platform. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So thank you for having me here today, Jill. My name is Joshua Sumrell. I'm currently the Director of Inclusion Belonging over at Western Connecticut State University. So excited to be here.
Thank you, Josh. So, what's your background in? What degrees do you have?
Of course. I have a degree in geography, my bachelor's degree. I also have a degree in human resource management through Fitchburg State, which is pretty cool. And I'm actually, in a couple of weeks, will be starting my doctorate degree at Western Connecticut State in instructional education leadership. So really excited about that. And as far as my experience goes, lots of experience in student affairs, via hall director, via working in student activities, working in a cultural center. And then now this is the first time not being in student affairs. But
Mhm.
nevertheless, I'm always working with students regardless.
Yeah, same. I mean, my office isn't in student affairs, but I don't know that I've ever really left student affairs.
Exactly.
Um, and you were an RA, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, I think a pivotal time in my life. I think that really changed my trajectory. Obviously, that's how we know each other, but
Mm-hmm.
it was I look back at that time as a pivotal point where I grew as an individual.
Mm-hmm. So you've dealt with student issues like on the ground as a student yourself, as a student leader. Then you became more of the management role, and now you're in leadership. Tell me, along your educational span or your trajectory in your career, did anyone ever educate you about vicarious trauma prior to going to my workshop?
Yeah, so I was reflecting on that, and I don't believe so. I
Mhm.
think the only parts of trauma I heard was just like, obviously the big medical trauma, you get
Yeah.
hurt and your body has trauma to it, or maybe even just you've gone through a very traumatic experience. Again, maybe an injury or a death, but that's really the only trauma you hear about. So I never heard of any secondary trauma that you can pick up. Um, and it was something, going to the workshop, I realized like, oh, I've experienced this before. Never knew it was a thing. So I was really excited with learning more about it at the workshop.
Is it fair to say that students, maybe even faculty and staff, has sought you out as a beacon of sounding board beyond just the job?
Absolutely. And I probably could correlate that to every step of every single job I've had.
Yeah.
I think I have one of those faces that are just, I want to talk to you. So I oftentimes am a sounding board for many individuals, even if it's not related to the college setting,
Mhm.
which I've embraced. I realize I have um, one of those faces where people can say, oh, maybe that person's gentle, or maybe that person will hear me out. Um, I know a recent time I'm in a leadership program in Danbury, and there was some tension. These are all adults, we're all professionals, but there was some tension going on. And usually I'm a very much sit in the back and kind of just assess things. But I realized there was an individual there that was having an emotional reaction to what was going on. So I kind of made eye contact with them and gave them a look of like, whatever you say, I got you, or I'm going to support you, whatever. So afterwards, the individual came up to me and was like, just thank you so much. You gave
Mhm.
this kind presence. And again, I just saw you as someone that um, there's a conflict brewing, but at least I know you have my back, or at least you're going to support me. So I've learned to embrace that in my personal life and professional life. Um, Obviously, my position now, not just focusing on students, but oftentimes faculty and staff are also reaching out saying, hey, I have this conflict around diversity, or what's going on in the world right now. I want to pick your brain about it. So I've learned to lean into that. But obviously that comes with a lot of side effects.
Yeah, for sure. And so I hear you saying it's your presence, right? And your approach that you do have this calmness about you. Is it fair to say it's also your personality or your identity or your availability and access that people find you to be approachable?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. I've always prided myself as someone that could, I'm willing to talk to anyone, even if we don't politically align, even if we don't personally align. I want to see you, I want to hear you. And I think a big part of diversity work is you can't pick and choose those moments. It has to be
Yeah.
for everyone. So, um, I've always prided myself of willing to have conversations with individuals,
Hmm.
and really just get a sense of where they're coming from. And I think that's how you are able to really build inclusive environments and kind of create this belonging. So, in my short time being at Western for 1 year, I feel like I've made lots of impacts. People know who I am. Actually, I was gone for 2 months with an injury, but people still got to know who I was and still have this presence. And I think that's a true skill to just build upon. And
Hmm.
um, but with that, again, like I think I'm hearing a lot of stories, I'm hearing a lot of
Hmm.
information. So I also have to make sure I'm taking care of myself in the process.
How has that worked for you? What tricks are you doing? What would you like to share with us about what you're doing?
Yeah, yeah. So I think when you supervised me, I think I was still figuring that out. I don't think I had the best mechanisms. Um, but as you know, I'm very much a person that likes to be challenged and likes to see a challenge and I like to fix it, right? And realizing that as I've gotten older, you can't fix everything. There are some problems in this world that are just problems. You can cope with them, you can address them, but they will never be solved. Um, so I know, like when at my previous institution, I had a student come up to me. They're like, "Yeah, how can we get rid of racism?" I'm
Mm.
like, "Well, there's nothing we can do to get rid of that. Unfortunately, it's always going to be present, but there are things we can do to be resilient towards it, to build up our mechanisms." So I've learned as an individual how to like shift that focus to not solving a problem, but being able to put up a good fight towards it and have that
Mhm.
grit when it comes to things. So personally, therapy has worked wonders. I tried a couple different therapists over time, and I think it's really just provided an outlook for me to be able to pour into someone else that's
Yeah.
obviously going to take that information and determine, okay, I hear you with this, or let's work on that. In the past, I would just internalize things, and again, I'm a quiet individual, so it's easy for me to just sit in my bubble and just think, but I've realized really being able to convey that out to someone else has been very helpful. Most recently, I've been taking up journaling. That was always one of my goals I wanted to do. So each morning time and evening time, I'm journaling, I'm writing down my thoughts, which
Mhm.
I think in return has helped me be able to speak about my thoughts a little bit more, especially to my partner. I've been able to be a little bit more vocal about how I'm feeling or what's going on with me versus being a shy, timid individual that I'm like, I have things rattling in my mind, but I don't know how to convey it. So, um, I think, journaling, I think counseling, but I think everyone works differently and everyone has
Mhm.
different things that will actually help them, reach whatever reach that sense of calmness with their self.
You're sharing a lot of different mechanisms and protective factors, and it's so helpful for others to hear. But it does take work, right? Like there is no pill we can take where post-traumatic stress disorder is the person who experienced a direct trauma. There it could be medication, there could be actual things that they can do, where vicarious trauma is the secondary trauma, and that's who we hear the PTSD from, right? Like we're the ones
Hmm.
that are supporting the individual who went through the direct trauma, and there is no pill for that. And this is like a way of life that we've opted into this profession, and part of it being the helping profession is that you take on other people's trauma, right? And then what
Hmm.
we need to do is manipulate how do we get rid of that, or how do we share it, vent it, move it forward the way it doesn't live in us in less like some toxic environment. Is
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
one thing that you've learned about yourself through the years that you might have grown or changed, or perspective has evolved a little bit because of your secondary trauma?
Yeah, yeah. I think I've always had this mindset of like, it's not a big deal, just brush it
Mhm.
off. Or, you
Yeah.
know, I think that comes with some toxic masculinity. I think it comes with being a black male. I think sometimes there's things it's like not a big deal, don't talk about it, or just
Yeah.
push through and it's not something you need to focus on because there's other stuff going on. But, not saying that that's the most unhealthy thing to do, but
Mhm.
again, really challenging that process of like, well, I'm entitled to have feelings. I'm entitled to have this reaction. I'm entitled to have a response to something, which I
Mhm.
think, I can sometimes speak for the Black male community. I think we sometimes are either don't want to have a response or we're afraid to have a response or told we can't have a response. So I've had to like over the years, especially more recently in the past 5 years, really sit with my blackness, sit with my identity and really figure out like, okay, is this triggering to me? Am I going to
Mhm.
respond to this? How can
Yeah.
I navigate what I'm feeling right now in a constructive way that's going to build myself as an individual,
Hmm.
knowing that again, thinking about my my career in my life, knowing that other individuals are looking at me. So I
Right.
oftentimes have lots of um, past RAs or past colleagues that, are, hey, Josh, I'm proud of you. You're in this EDD journey, or I'm proud
Hmm.
of you. You're married. Like they see me as this role model, not knowing
Hmm.
that I have all these other things I'm working on the side and mentally going through. But so yeah, I think it's important to have those structures in place, but knowing that I can be vulnerable.
Hmm.
I think that was one of the things I realized recently that being vulnerable is a strength and being able to say, I don't know something, or I'm still working on this. Where I think old Josh used to be like, oh no, I'm a pro at this, or
Yeah.
but just pretend like I didn't know something. But yeah, I think leaning into that vulnerability and leaning into those supports because we all need it. We all need that help.
Hmm.
Um, and we all need that support, like I said.
It's so interesting, Josh, because I had this conversation recently with someone and they said, does anyone not have vicarious trauma? And I said, well, of course, like individuals that are not in the helping profession and who are not exposed to lived experiences of others, then they wouldn't have it, right? But also AI doesn't have it. And they
Hmm.
like paused for a minute and I'm like, yeah, because they're a robot, right? Like that's a
Hmm.
mechanism. We are humans. And so we can't just light switch on and off of when we want to have an emotional response. And I think you and I have learned being in like compliance work that we need to make sure that we're aware of our implicit bias, aware of how we respond so that we do not have bias in our approaches, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
in itself takes work, right?
Oh, definitely.
Huge commitment to be able to acknowledge that and be aware of it so that we're bipartisan when dealing with situations. Um, Only because you mentioned being married. And at some point you flashed your new band. So I think
Yep.
everyone can understand that you're married. So can I share that they are in a helping profession as well?
Absolutely. Yep.
And so what do you think that there's any nuance? Because my partner's also in the helping profession. And so we do have some rules in the house. And I'm curious to know if you established anything. Like in our family, we don't typically talk about our cases, right? Like that's a no-no. But we also say, like, hey, this is a work question. And we premise it. Otherwise, we don't support each other to like problem solve.
Mhm.
Because then that's a different hat. Like, do you guys have any rules in your home right now?
Yeah, so obviously being recently married, we're still establishing what those rules are going to be. But I think we've always just leaned on each other for that emotional support, realizing that my partner could be dealing with a case that's really intense and it's really taxing and it's really like, pulls on her heartstrings where to me, I might have a different reaction to it, like, oh, whatever.
Hmm.
So, I think as time goes off, I think we'll continue to figure out what works the most for both of us. Because there's times when I come home and I'm just, I can play video games. I've already
Right.
compartmentalized it to something else, which I'll journal about later or go
Hmm.
hiking later, or um, I realize I like to play video games, so then I sometimes take out my anger in the video game, which I feel like is healthy, maybe. I'm not too sure. But
We're not here to
um,
judge.
yeah, okay. So I think it's all about having those mechanisms, which me and my partner are continuing to work on what works best for us. So there are times when she may have something that's really on her, and she may feel like no one's hearing her out or no one's
Mhm.
understands the brevity of what's going on, especially depending on whatever the particulars of that case.
Right.
Um, and with her line of work, with my line of work, we're not going to get into specific details, but there's
Mhm.
still this emotional reaction to it, which we can always be there for each other. So to answer the question, I think we're still working on these
Yeah.
strategies, but I do think we'll like figure out as time goes on.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to be like candid and vulnerable about was that now in my career of being in the field for about 2 decades or so, is that I do believe that I failed my student leaders by not learning about vicarious trauma earlier. So, as a hall director, I never brought my RAs in and said, you're going to experience these things and this is how to do things. I think in the early ages, we talked about self care a lot, but we
Hmm.
never really talked about vicarious trauma until I like really did my research. And now, kind of circling back with colleagues to say, this is a thing. This is actually what I should have been talking about, early on in my career. But
Hmm.
is there anything that you learned, and it could be something like not even tangible, it could just be like philosophy wise, that helped to normalize, legitimize? Like, was there any aha moment that after I started talking about vicarious trauma at nauseum with you, that you were like, this clicks and this is what I'm taking with me?
Yeah, so I'm trying to reflect when I went to the workshop. I don't remember what year it was, but I think maybe that week after I had situation on campus where a student um felt like they were racially discriminated against. So, they and I wasn't in the reporting line of it. They just wanted to talk to me about it. So we talked it through for an hour. Then I was like, I gotta head home. So I like left and went
Mhm.
home. Well, obviously reported to my supervisor, did the
Right,
whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Um, but I left home just really thinking about it. And then, being annoyed about it and being anxious about it because I'm like, wow, this student felt comfortable enough to come and talk to me about it. But
Hmm.
I'm just imagining every other student that may be in that same situation that doesn't have someone like me to talk to. So I
Hmm.
start to feel guilty. I start to feel like, oh, maybe I need to be doing more. Maybe I need to be put myself out there. Um, so you start to go through this whole role of Rolodex of different responses to it. And I think I didn't really pinpoint that until after the workshop. Then I'm like, oh, okay, this is what this is. I'm feeling
Hmm.
the effects of someone going through something that's very traumatic. And though I didn't experience it, I'm being affected by it. So, um, I think ever since then, I've been more cognizant of when there are these interactions and what I can do to make sure that I'm protecting myself and I'm still being able to pour into others as much as people are pouring into me. Because, like I mentioned before, I'm oftentimes getting
Hmm.
stories, hey, this is what's going on. Even in this current role, um, obviously a lot of things are going on with underdocumented folks. And I'm oftentimes hearing stories from students, from faculty, and, having to, obviously have my reactions to it, but also being, having to be a support for them as well. And, I think right now with our jobs, it's not just at work, but we're seeing it everywhere. And
Yeah.
it's kind of a little bit harder to just, do your 9 to 5 and
Hmm.
let me deal with this tomorrow or, pull my emails later on. So I think, it's great that I'm able to identify a little bit more now.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, not being able to identify it, I think I would just label it as, well, I'm just burnt out, or this is how it is, and you know, this is just the way it is. But now I'm able to actually really pinpoint on this is the problem, this is how I'm
Hmm.
feeling. Let me make sure my coping mechanisms are in place, and let me make sure that I'm able to take a second and sit on these
Hmm.
feelings and learn from them.
I know for me, I used to go through this, why am I in such a bad mood? And then like beat myself up and say, why can't I just snap out of it and go out to dinner with friends or family? And I think that for me, being able to give my space the acknowledgement that it's a process and that it's okay that I'm not able to just, switch easily, gave me that space, and
Hmm. Hmm.
we talked a lot about what are the other consequences, and you mentioned burnout. And so many of our colleagues feel like they are burnt out, and I'm not negating their feelings, but until you learn how to measure that and how to use tools to really actually understand this is not burnout, this is how I'm exhibiting my vicarious trauma, and this is what burnout will look like, I
Hmm.
think has
Hmm.
also helped a lot of the participants. So I appreciate you sharing your lived experience, and that others who are watching us today will say, yeah, that's exactly how I'm feeling, and we don't rehearse these conversations, this is just ad hoc. What do you think? And I always
Hmm.
appreciate how easy and effortless it is to talk with you. I've been ending every session asking the participant for like one word or one phrase to spill the beans so that I can name the episode after you. And I know that you're an analytical thinker and that I didn't want to give you homework, but I have a feeling that you did. But if it's not the word that you chose or the phrase you chose, then maybe you're inspired to a new one. But I will ask you today, Josh, is there a word or a phrase that you want to spill the beans with us today?
Of course. And of course, I did my homework in advance
I knew
because
it.
that's the type of person I am. Um, and I had different versions, but I think what I'm going to stick with is you're not Superman, right? Or you're not superhuman. Um, I think I always had this complex again, going back to my earlier years, like there's a problem, I'm going to fix it. It's very black and white. There's no gray areas of stuff. But as I've gotten older, realizing that it's not like that. You cannot fix everything. Some things are not meant to be fixed. Some things are supposed to be a problem, and maybe they require other people to fix or to chime in or to get it where it needs to be. So, having that self-reflection has been very helpful, and it's something I'm still working with every single day, knowing that, I don't need to be so hard on myself or not doing something or not being everywhere all the time. As long as I'm putting my best foot forward, as long as when I go to bed at night, I'm able to take a sigh of relief, knowing that I did the best I can to support my loved ones, my family, my friends, my students, my colleagues, and kind of sit with that emotion again. So, I know the new Superman movie, I think he does show a lot of emotion. I haven't seen it yet, but I do think it's important that again, we're human. We're not AI. We're not these machines that can just turn off and turn on and don't have any emotions tied to it. So I think my line would be like, "You're not Superman," and just understand that we are humans. We have feelings. We're vulnerable. We make mistakes, and we learn from them.
Thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate you spending the time with us today on Spill the Beans with Dr. Jill. So until next time, take care, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching today's episode with Josh, who was one of my RAs back in the days. It's so nice for him to reflect on some of the protective factors and behaviors that he's doing to help himself in his career daily, lessons that he's learned and aha moments. So I really appreciate that. It struck with me that his phrase was that we're not superheroes, we're not superhuman, and we're not supermen. Um, I think that's so poignant to remember and to keep that in mind because often the work that we do, it feels like we're expected to be superheroes. And in fact, a lot of the helping professions I would categorize are superheroes. I think doctors and lawyers and police and some other of the helping professions, they create some wonderful miracles of life and ways to save individuals. Um, and I think that there are probably some students in higher ed who would say that Josh has been a hero. I hope students have said that about me, and I'm sure they've said that about you. The goal, though, would be for us to acknowledge that we do have limitations. And so while our behavior may be heroish, um, we do need to be acknowledged that we're human first and foremost. So keep putting yourself first. And until you get that cemented into your behavior, I'm going to continue Spill the Beans with Dr. Jill and remind you. Thanks so much. Bye bye.